I'm Jacob, I'm 35, and my family watched in silence as my golden child younger brother called me a freeloader at the Thanksgiving dinner table. The punchline? I was, at that very moment, 5 years deep into paying off his staggering $52,800 credit card debt. Before I tell you about the glorious, catastrophic fallout that followed, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always amazing to see how far a story can travel. The scene was exactly what you'd picture from a holiday movie. The rich smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon hung in the air, silverware clinked against my mom's best china, and the low hum of conversation filled my parents' perfectly decorated dining room. On the surface, it was perfect, but underneath it was a minefield. It always was. I'd arrived on time, as usual, with a homemade pumpkin pie that my mom accepted with a tight, thin smile before placing it on a side table. Forgotten. "Oh, Jacob, you're here," she'd said, her eyes already scanning the driveway. "Your brother is running a little late. He's so busy these days." When my brother, Lucas, finally graced us with his presence 30 minutes late, he was greeted like a returning war hero. My mother, Eleanor, rushed to hug him. My father, Henry, clapped him on the back, a genuine, booming laugh echoing in the hall. Lucas had this effect on people. He was charming, handsome, and radiated an effortless confidence that I, in my sensible button-down and quiet demeanor, had never been able to replicate. The dinner started with the usual dance. My accomplishments, a recent promotion at my accounting firm, were met with a simple, "That's nice, dear." Lucas's vague stories about a potential new venture were met with oohs and ahs and detailed questions. The tipping point came during dessert. Our cousin Megan was talking to me quietly about her student loans, asking for some advice. I was happy to help, sketching out a potential payment plan on a napkin. That's when Lucas leaned across the table, a smirk playing on his lips. He cut me off mid-sentence. "Honestly, Jacob," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "you should stop begging for money. It's embarrassing." The clinking of forks stopped. The conversation died. A thick, suffocating silence fell over the room. 12 pairs of eyes darted from Lucas to me. I looked at my mother, then my father. They knew the truth. They knew about the monthly payments, the sacrifices, the secret I'd kept for 5 years. They said nothing. Their silence was a verdict. A strange sense of calm washed over me. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was clarity. The kind of sharp, cold clarity you get just before a lightning strike. I smiled. A small, genuine smile. "You know what, Lucas? You're right." I excused myself from the table, walked to the quiet of the guest bathroom, and pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app, my fingers moving with practiced precision. Payment to Capital One. Beneficiary, Lucas Cole. Amount, $450. Frequency, monthly. Cancel. Payment to Chase Sapphire. Beneficiary, Lucas Cole. Amount, $600. Frequency, monthly. Cancel. Payment to Amex Gold. Beneficiary, Lucas Cole. Amount, $550. Frequency, monthly. Cancel. Payment to Discover It. Beneficiary, Lucas Cole. Amount, $300. Frequency, monthly. Cancel. Payment to Personal Loan. Beneficiary, Lucas Cole. Amount, $300. Frequency, monthly. Cancel. 5 taps. 5 confirmations. 5 years of servitude, erased in 30 seconds. As I walked back to the dining room, a faint buzzing sound started from Lucas's end of the table. Then another, and another. It was his phone, vibrating with alerts from the banks. His confident smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then panic. The storm had just begun, and I was the one who had summoned it. To understand how we got to that Thanksgiving dinner, you have to go back 5 years. I was 30, and Lucas was 25. I was already established in my career, building a reputation for being reliable, methodical, the kind of person you trust with your company's finances. I lived modestly, saving diligently, with a clear plan for my future. Lucas was different. He was a whirlwind of brilliant ideas and fleeting passions. One month he was launching a boutique marketing agency. The next, he was developing an app that was going to revolutionize social dining. Each venture was accompanied by a flurry of social media posts showcasing a glamorous lifestyle. Networking events at rooftop bars, brainstorming sessions on sunny beaches, and always the latest designer clothes and tech gadgets. He was the son my parents bragged about. I was the son they relied on. The call came late on a Tuesday night. I remember I was working late, reconciling accounts for a quarterly report. My phone rang, and Lucas's name flashed on the screen. His voice, when I answered, was strained, stripped of its usual bravado. "Jake? Hey man, you got a minute?" He told me a story about a client who had pulled out at the last minute, a major investment that fell through, leaving him in a temporary bind. He made it sound like a fluke, a bump in the road on his highway to success. "It's just a few credit cards," he'd said, his voice laced with practiced shame. "I got a little overextended, you know how it is. I just need a little help to get back on my feet. Just for a few months, I swear. I'll pay you back every cent with interest." He sounded so convincing, so genuinely distressed. He was my little brother. You help your little brother. That's what big brothers do. I had a healthy savings account, a solid salary, and a deep-seated, lifelong need for my family's approval. Maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to finally be the hero in their eyes, not just the reliable accountant. "How much is it?" I asked. He hesitated. "It's a bit, but I can handle it once this new deal closes. I just need to keep the banks off my back so my credit score doesn't tank. It would kill the business." He made it sound like I wasn't just helping him. I was saving his future. The bit turned out to be balances across 5 different cards, totaling just over $50,000. It was a staggering amount. It made me physically nauseous. But the shame in his voice, the thought of him failing, the fear of what my parents would think, it all clouded my judgment. "Okay," I said, the word feeling heavy and foolish even as it left my lips. "Okay, Lucas, I'll help you." I set up the payments myself directly to the credit card companies. It seemed safer that way. I told myself it was temporary. A few months, maybe a year. He was my brother, after all. He wouldn't let me down. That was my first and biggest mistake. I wasn't just paying his bills. I was funding his lie. And I was about to become the silent, invisible investor in a life I couldn't even afford for myself. The first payment went out that Friday. It was the beginning of a 5-year sentence I had unknowingly imposed upon myself. The thing is, Lucas being the favorite wasn't a new development. It was the bedrock of our family dynamic, the unspoken truth that shaped every holiday, every birthday, every phone call. He was the golden child, and I was the good son. They sound similar, but they're worlds apart. The golden child is loved for who he is. The good son is loved for what he does. I remember my college graduation. I finished magna cum laude in accounting, a notoriously difficult program. My parents came, we took pictures, and they said, "We're proud of you, Jacob. A good, stable career." It felt like they were praising a sensible car purchase. Later that year, Lucas dropped out of his business program after 2 semesters. My parents flew to his college town and took him to a fancy dinner to help him through this difficult transition. My mother told everyone, "Lucas is a creative spirit. The structure of formal education was just stifling him." When I got my first big promotion, the one that pushed my salary into 6 figures, I called them excited. My dad's response was, "That's great, son. Hey, can you call your brother? He's having some car trouble." My success was immediately repurposed as a resource for Lucas's latest problem. Their house was a shrine to Lucas. His high school football trophies were still polished and displayed in the living room. Photos of his travels, paid for by debt I was now covering, were framed on the mantelpiece. The one picture of me was a small, dated photo from my graduation, tucked away on a bookshelf in the den. This dynamic became painfully clear every Christmas. I would spend weeks searching for the perfect gifts for my parents, thoughtful, practical things I knew they'd use. They'd open them and say, "Oh, how lovely, Jacob. Thank you." Then Lucas would stroll in with something flashy and expensive, probably bought on credit, and my mother would burst into tears of joy. One year, he got them a massive flat-screen TV. They talked about it for months. That same year, I'd paid for the new furnace in their basement. It was never mentioned again. I was the family's safety net, the financial backstop, the responsible one who made sure the lights stayed on behind the scenes. Lucas was the star of the show. My role was to be reliable. His role was to be brilliant. And slowly, I started to realize that in their eyes, reliability was boring. It was expected. It wasn't worthy of the same unconditional love and admiration that Lucas received just for existing. So when I agreed to pay his debts, it wasn't just an act of brotherly kindness. It was a subconscious attempt to finally win the game. If I could be the one to secretly save their precious golden child, if I could fix his biggest problem without anyone knowing, then surely that would make me worthy. Surely then they would see me. They would finally see me. It was a desperate, silent plea for validation. A plea that would go unanswered for 5 long, expensive years. The first year of payments felt like a temporary sacrifice. I told myself it was a good deed. I cut back on eating out, I put off buying a new car, and I watched my savings account, once a source of pride, stagnate. Meanwhile, my social media feeds were filled with Lucas's adventures. There he was in Aspen, ski lift selfie with a dazzling smile, captioned, "Work hard, play hard." The Amex Gold payment for that trip went through my account that same week. There he was in Miami, on a yacht with a group of beautiful people, raising a champagne glass. Caption, "Closing deals in the sunshine." I paid the minimum on his Chase Sapphire card, the one with the highest interest rate, while eating ramen at my kitchen counter. He never once said, "Thank you." Not directly. The topic was a black hole of unspoken agreement. We never ever talked about it. To acknowledge the payments would be to acknowledge his failure, and the entire family system was designed to protect Lucas from that reality. By year 2, the temporary situation was clearly permanent. His spending didn't decrease. It escalated. He leased a new luxury SUV. He moved into a trendy downtown loft apartment. He met Olivia, a smart, successful woman from a wealthy family, and began a whirlwind romance. He presented himself to her, and to the world, as a self-made entrepreneur on the verge of a massive breakthrough. The resentment started to curdle in my gut. It was a low, constant burn. I was living in a small, one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city to maximize the money I could send him. I was wearing shirts that were starting to fray at the collar. My life had been put on hold so that he could live a lie. It was around the 3rd year that I started the spreadsheet. It wasn't for revenge, not at first. It was for my own sanity. I needed to see it all in black and white to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. I created a simple Excel file. Date, payment amount, card/loan, running total. January 2021, $2,200. Total, $26,400. February 2022, $2,200. Total, $52,800. March 2023, $2,200. Total, $79,200. Wait, that's not right. Let me recalculate. My salary was good, but not that good. The total monthly payment was $2,200. After 1 year, $2,200 x 12 equals $26,400. After 2 years, $52,800. After 3 years, $79,200. After 4 years, $105,600. After 5 years, $132,000. The initial amount was $52,800. Let's adjust the story's math to be consistent. The hook says I'd paid off her $52,800 debt. That implies the total paid was that amount. Let's assume the monthly payment was lower. $52,800/5 years/12 months equals $880 per month. That's more realistic for a secret payment. Let's rewind and fix the numbers to be logical. Correction of the numbers. The total debt was $52,800. Over 5 years, 60 months. That's an average of $880 per month. I'll break that down into 5 smaller, more believable payments. Let's say, Capital One, $200 Chase, $250 Amex, $200 Discover, $100 Personal Loan, $130 total, $880 per month. Let's rewrite the relevant parts with this more logical number. The first year of payments felt like a temporary sacrifice. I told myself it was a good deed. The total came to $880 a month, a significant chunk of my disposable income. I cut back on eating out, I put off buying a new car, and I watched my savings account, once a source of pride, stagnate. Meanwhile, my social media feeds were filled with Lucas's adventures. There he was in Aspen, ski lift selfie with a dazzling smile, captioned, "Work hard, play hard." The Amex payment for that trip cleared from my account that same week. There he was in Miami, on a yacht with a group of beautiful people, raising a champagne glass. Caption, "Closing deals in the sunshine." I paid the Chase Sapphire bill while eating ramen at my kitchen counter. He never once said, "Thank you." The topic was a black hole of unspoken agreement. We never ever talked about it. To acknowledge the payments would be to acknowledge his failure, and the entire family system was designed to protect Lucas from that reality. By year 2, the temporary situation was clearly permanent. His spending didn't decrease. It escalated. He leased a new luxury SUV. He moved into a trendy downtown loft apartment. He met Olivia, a smart, successful woman from a good family, and began a whirlwind romance. He presented himself to her and to the world as a self-made entrepreneur. The resentment started to curdle in my gut. It was a low, constant burn. I was living in a small, one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city to cover that extra $880 a month. I was wearing shirts that were starting to fray at the collar. My life had been put on hold so that he could live a lie. It was around the 3rd year that I started the spreadsheet. It wasn't for revenge, not at first. It was for my own sanity. I needed to see it all in black and white to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. I created a simple Excel file. Date, payment amount, card/loan, running total. Column A, date. Column B, Capital One, $200. Column C, Chase, $250. Column D, Amex, $200. Column E, Discover, $100. Column F, Personal Loan, $130. Column G, Monthly Total, $880. Column H, Grand Total. The rows stretched on and on, month after month, year after year. Watching the grand total climb was sickening and hypnotic. $31,680, $42,240, $52,800. That number, $52,800. It represented 5 years of my life. 5 years of skipped vacations, delayed investments, and a quiet, lonely existence. All to fuel the brilliant, dazzling lie of my brother Lucas. The spreadsheet became my secret, my witness. It was the only thing in the world that knew the full truth. As I packed my single pumpkin pie to head to my parents' house for Thanksgiving that year, I had no idea that my silent witness was about to be called to the stand. The drive home from my parents' house after the Thanksgiving incident was surreal. The usual holiday traffic was a blur. For the first time in 5 years, I felt light. The crushing weight of that $880 monthly payment, a burden I'd grown so accustomed to I barely noticed it anymore, was gone. But it was more than that. The weight of the secret, the resentment, the desperate need for approval. It had all been cauterized in that single, silent act of defiance. I slept better that night than I had in years. The peace lasted until exactly 7:15 a.m. the next morning. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Lucas. Lucas. Hey man, weird question. Did my Amex payment go through? Got a weird alert. I looked at the message and smiled. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, another buzz. Lucas. Seriously, Jake. My Chase card just got declined buying coffee. What's going on? Did you forget? Forget? The condescension was breathtaking, as if I were his personal assistant who'd made a clerical error. I continued to ignore him. The text started coming faster, a frantic staccato of entitlement and rising panic. Lucas, pick up your phone. Lucas, this isn't funny. I have bills due. My car payment is linked to one of these cards. Lucas, Jacob, answer me. Then the phone calls started. I let each one go to voicemail. The silence, I was discovering, was a far more powerful weapon than any angry words I could have spoken. At 9 a.m., my phone rang with a different name, Mom. I knew I had to answer this one. I took a deep breath and swiped to accept. Jacob? What is going on? Her voice was sharp, accusatory. There was no hello. No, how are you? Good morning to you too, Mom, I said, my voice even. Don't be difficult. Your brother is in a complete panic. He says his cards are being declined everywhere. He says you're not answering his calls. Did you forget to make the payments? There it was again. That word. Forget. As if I was the forgetful one. The unreliable one. No, Mom. I didn't forget, I said calmly. There was a pause. Well, what is it then? Are you having financial trouble? You should have said something. We could have figured it out. The implication was clear. If I was having trouble, I was the problem that needed figuring out. Also, the support line to Lucas could be maintained. I'm not having financial trouble, Mom. I'm doing just fine. In fact, my budget just freed up by about $880 a month. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, the denial warring with the dawning, horrific truth. What did you do? She finally whispered, her voice tight with disbelief. I did what Lucas told me to do, I said, letting the words hang in the air. He told me to stop begging for money, so I did. I stopped paying his. I heard a sharp intake of breath. Jacob, you can't be serious. You know he relies on you. You're his brother. How could you be so selfish? After everything we've done for you. That was it. That was the line. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of that statement broke something in me. Everything you've done for me? I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. I have paid $52,800 of his debt over 5 years. A debt he racked up living a life you all praised him for. And yesterday you sat there and let him humiliate me. You chose your favorite son. Well, now your favorite son gets to be his own man. The bank of Jacob is officially closed. I didn't wait for a reply. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. The first real battle had been fought, and I hadn't backed down. I thought the call with my mother was the worst of it. I was wrong. The real gut punch, the one that truly twisted the knife, came an hour later. My dad, Henry, called. My dad and I had always had a quiet, unspoken understanding. He was a man of few words, a passive observer in my mother's orbit of favoritism. But I always believed that underneath his silence, he was a fair man. He was the one who taught me how to balance a checkbook, who stressed the importance of a good credit score and living within your means. I thought, foolishly, that he would see the logic in my actions. I thought he would be my ally. Jacob, he said, his voice low and heavy with disappointment. It was the voice he used when I was a kid and had broken a window playing baseball. Hi, Dad, I said, a sliver of hope still flickering. Your mother is very upset, he started. You've put her in a terrible position. Not Lucas is in a terrible position. Not you must be hurting. But you've upset your mother. Once again, my actions were framed by how they affected everyone else. I didn't put her in any position, Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Lucas's choices and her reaction are what created this situation. He's your brother, son, he said, and the condescending tone made my skin crawl. Families help each other out. It's what we do. Did you know the total, Dad? I asked, cutting through his platitudes. Did Mom ever tell you the exact number? It was $52,800. Over 5 years. While he was buying new cars and taking vacations, I was living in a shoebox apartment and putting my own life on hold. Did you know that? There was a long pause. When he finally spoke, his voice was strained. I knew you were helping him. I didn't know the specifics. Well, now you do, I said. And yesterday you knew the specifics of what he said to me at that table. And you did nothing. You said nothing. This was it. The moment of truth. I was offering him a chance, a lifeline to redeem himself in my eyes. He could say, "You're right, son. I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you." Instead, he said the 5 words that shattered the last bit of respect I had for him. "You've changed, Jacob," he sighed. "You used to be such a good son, so kind. Now you're just being cruel." Cruel. The word hit me like a physical blow. Me who had sacrificed for 5 years. Me who had quietly enabled their delusion to keep the peace. Me who had just wanted a simple thank you or a shred of acknowledgement. I was the cruel one. The phone felt slick in my hand. My throat closed up, and for a second, I couldn't speak. He wasn't just defending Lucas. He was mourning the loss of the compliant, useful son I used to be. He wasn't sad for me. He was sad that his family's ATM had suddenly grown a spine. "I have to go, Dad," I managed to choke out, my voice thick with a betrayal so profound it felt like grief. "Just think about your brother," he said, one last parting shot. I said, my voice turning to ice. For 5 years, he was all I thought about. Now, for the first time, I'm going to think about myself. I ended the call, and in the crushing silence of my apartment, I finally allowed myself to mourn. Not for Lucas, not for my parents, but for the family I thought I had, and the father I wished he could have been. That was a betrayal from which there was no coming back. When direct emotional blackmail from my parents failed, Lucas switched tactics. He couldn't control me anymore, so he decided to control the narrative. He launched a full-scale smear campaign, and I was the target. It started with the extended family. My phone began to buzz with texts from aunts and uncles. My Aunt Patricia, my mom's sister, texted first, "Jacob, your mother is worried sick about you. Are you okay? We're all here for you if you're going through something." The implication was clear. I wasn't acting rationally. I must be having some sort of breakdown. Then came a call from my Uncle Warren. "Hey kiddo, Lucas told me you two had a little falling out over some money. He feels terrible about it. He said he was worried you're under a lot of stress at work, maybe not thinking clearly." Lucas was painting himself as the concerned, forgiving brother, and me as the unstable, vindictive one. He was telling everyone that I had lent him a small amount of money years ago, and now I was having a mental health crisis and blowing it all out of proportion. He was twisting my act of self-preservation into an act of insanity. The most infuriating part was that it was working. My family had a pre-established script. Lucas is charming and successful. Jacob is quiet and responsible. My sudden refusal to play my part was easier to explain as a personal failing on my end than to confront the uncomfortable truth that their golden child was a manipulative fraud. Then he took it public. Lucas posted a vague, melodramatic status on his social media. It was a masterclass in passive aggression. It was a picture of him looking pensively out a window, captioned, "Tough times lately. It's hard when the people you love the most are the ones who try to tear you down. Financial jealousy is a real and ugly thing. Praying for peace and healing for everyone involved." The comments section was an avalanche of sympathy. "Stay strong, Lucas. Don't let the haters get you down. I can't believe a family member would do that to you." He didn't use my name, but he didn't have to. The entire family knew who he was talking about. He was publicly branding me as jealous and unhinged. The man whose life of luxury I had been secretly funding was now accusing me of financial jealousy. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. I felt a surge of white-hot anger. My first instinct was to fight back, to post the spreadsheet, to expose him for the liar he was. But then I thought better of it. Public feud would be messy. It would just make me look as desperate and childish as him. No, he wanted a reaction. He wanted me to lose my cool. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Instead, I called the one person in the family I knew I could trust. My cousin, Megan. She was smart, level-headed, and had always seen through the family's nonsense. "Megan? It's Jacob," I said when she answered. "I know," she replied, her voice warm but serious. "I've been waiting for your call. I saw Lucas's post. Don't worry, I'm not buying a word of it. Now, tell me everything. From the beginning." For the next hour, I did. I told her about the 5 years, the $880 a month, the spreadsheet, the scene at Thanksgiving, the phone calls from my parents. I laid the entire ugly story bare. When I was finished, there was a moment of silence. Then Megan said, "Wow, I knew they favored him, but I had no idea it was this bad. Jacob, you did the right thing. It's about time someone stood up to him. What do you need from me?" Her validation felt like a lifeline in a sea of gaslighting. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I was just done. "For now, just believe me," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Always," she said. "Now, let's figure out what comes next." Knowing I had at least one person in my corner gave me the strength to weather the storm I knew was still coming. Meeting Megan for coffee felt like coming up for air after being held underwater. We sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe. The smell of roasted coffee beans a comforting contrast to the toxicity of the past few days. I pulled out my laptop and showed her the spreadsheet. She scrolled through the rows, her eyes widening. 60 rows of payments. 60 months of my life, distilled into numbers on a screen. "My God, Jacob," she whispered, looking up at me. "He didn't just ask for help. He systematically drained you. This is financial abuse." Hearing her say it out loud solidified something in my mind. It wasn't just helping family. It was exploitation. Megan's unwavering support was the anchor I needed. She helped me reframe the narrative in my own head. I wasn't the villain. I was the victim who had finally decided to stop playing the part. "So what's Olivia like?" Megan asked, changing the subject. "Does she know any of this?" Olivia, Lucas's wife. I'd only met her a handful of times. She was poised, intelligent, and seemed to genuinely adore Lucas. She came from a family with old money, not flashy, but substantial. She always seemed a little too good to be true, and definitely too good for my brother. "I don't think so," I said. "He's built this whole image for her of being a successful entrepreneur. The story he told everyone was that he had a small trust fund from a distant relative that gave him his start. An inheritance that let him take risks." "A trust fund?" Megan snorted into her latte. "The only trust fund Lucas has ever had is you." We talked for another hour, and for the first time I felt a sense of strategy, not just survival. I had an ally. The world felt a little less lonely. As I was driving home, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello, is this Jacob?" The voice was female, professional, and vaguely familiar. "Yes, speaking." "Jacob, this is Olivia Cole." My blood ran cold. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I pulled over to the side of the road, my heart hammering against my ribs. Was this the next wave of attack? Was she calling to scream at me, to defend her husband? "Olivia," I said, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "Hello. I know this is an incredibly awkward call to make," she began, and her tone was not hostile. It was confused. "I apologize for calling you out of the blue. Lucas is, well, he's been very agitated the last few days, and frankly, he's not making a lot of sense." I stayed silent, letting her talk. "He's talking about some business disagreement the two of you had," she continued carefully. "But a few strange things have happened. Our joint checking account is lower than it should be, and I got an alert about a missed payment on a credit card I didn't even know he had. He's being very evasive about it." I could hear the calculated precision in her words. She was fishing for information, but she was doing it intelligently. "He mentioned your name in relation to the missed payment," she said, her voice dropping slightly. "This is going to sound strange, but he made it seem like you were responsible for making his payments. That can't be right, can it?" The moment hung in the air, charged with unspoken possibilities. This was a critical juncture. I could tell her everything and risk an explosion, or I could play dumb and stay out of their marital issues. I thought of Megan's words. Financial abuse. I thought of Olivia, who had been unknowingly married into a massive lie. She deserved the truth, but I had to be smart about it. Olivia, I said slowly, choosing my words with care. I think you and I need to have a conversation, but not over the phone, and not with Lucas involved. Just the two of us. There was a long pause on her end. I could practically hear her processing the implications of my statement. Yes, she finally said, her voice firm, all confusion replaced by a sudden, steely resolve. I think you're right. When and where? We agreed to meet the next day. As I hung up, I realized the game had changed. This was no longer just about me and my brother. I had just armed his wife with a single powerful weapon. Suspicion. And I had a feeling Olivia was the kind of person who would not rest until she uncovered the entire truth. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Part 4.2. A desperate act, 350 words. Lucas must have sensed he was losing control, because his next move was one of pure, unadulterated desperation. The following afternoon, while I was in the middle of a meeting at work, the receptionist buzzed my desk. Jacob? Your brother is here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. My stomach clenched. Tell him I'm in a meeting, Sarah. I'll call him later. A minute later, she buzzed again, her voice flustered. Jacob, he's not listening. He's coming back. Before I could respond, the glass door to our department swung open and there was Lucas. His face a mask of fury, his hair disheveled. He strode directly toward my cubicle, ignoring the stunned looks of my colleagues. We need to talk, he hissed, his voice low and menacing. Now. Lucas, this is my office. You can't be here, I said, standing up, trying to keep my voice calm and professional. My boss, Mr. Sterling, was watching from his office with a frown. I don't care. You're ruining my life, he exclaimed, his voice rising in volume. People were starting to stare openly now. You think this is some kind of joke? You cut me off without any warning. I think you need to leave, I said firmly, my face burning with embarrassment. Not until you fix this. Turn the payments back on. I'll pay you back, he sputtered, the lie sounding hollow even to his own ears. Just then, Mr. Sterling emerged from his office. He was a calm, no-nonsense man in his late 60s. He walked over and stood beside me, his presence immediately commanding respect. Is there a problem here, Jacob? He asked, his eyes fixed on Lucas. No, sir. My brother was just leaving, I said. Mr. Sterling looked at Lucas. This is a place of business, young man. Whatever personal issues you have, you will take them elsewhere. Now. His voice was quiet, but it carried the unmistakable weight of authority. Lucas looked from Mr. Sterling to me, his chest heaving. He had wanted to intimidate me, to make a scene and force my hand. Instead, he had just made himself look like a volatile, unstable child in front of my entire professional world. Defeated, he shot me a look of pure hatred, turned on his heel, and stormed out. Mr. Sterling watched him go, then turned to me. Everything all right? Yes, sir. I apologize for the disruption. Don't apologize for him, he said, with a surprising amount of empathy in his eyes. Family can be complicated. He gave me a brief nod and walked back to his office. The incident was humiliating, but it was also a gift. Lucas had shown his true colors. He wasn't a charming entrepreneur. He was a reckless bully, and he had just proven it to the world, or at least to my corner of it. His desperate act had backfired spectacularly. My meeting with Olivia was at the same quiet coffee shop where I'd met Megan. She arrived exactly on time, dressed in a tasteful, understated outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked composed, but I could see the tension in the set of her jaw. Thank you for meeting me, Jacob, she said, her voice steady. Of course, I replied. We ordered coffee, the small talk feeling absurdly normal given the circumstances. Once the barista was gone, she got straight to the point. I spent last night going through our finances, she said, her gaze direct and unflinching. Or rather, what I thought were our finances. Lucas has been lying to me. Not small lies, big ones. She told me she'd found statements for credit cards he'd sworn he'd closed years ago. She had discovered that the down payment for their SUV hadn't come from his business profits, but from a high-interest personal loan. And most damningly, she had called her father, who was a financial advisor. She'd asked him to discreetly inquire about the Thompson Family Trust Fund Lucas had always claimed was his safety net. As I'm sure you know, Olivia said, a humorless smile touching her lips, it doesn't exist. It never has. There is no inheritance. I just nodded, letting her control the conversation. So I have to ask you again, Jacob, were you paying his bills? This was it. No more hiding. No more protecting him. Yes, I said. For 5 years. I have a spreadsheet if you'd like to see it. I opened my laptop and turned it towards her. I didn't need to explain it. She was smart. She understood the numbers instantly. She scrolled through it in silence, her composure cracking just a little. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, and she wiped it away angrily. The whole time, she whispered, more to herself than to me. He was taking me to fancy dinners, buying me expensive gifts, with your money. With money he was bleeding from his own brother. He told me it was temporary, I said quietly. I believed him. He's a very convincing liar, she agreed, her voice hardening. She closed the laptop. Well, the lies stop now. I'm done. I'm not going to let him drag me down into his financial ruin. I've already spoken to a lawyer to understand my options regarding a potential divorce if he can't fix this. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I've called a family meeting for tonight, she announced, her tone shifting from victim to commander. At our house. My parents will be there, and yours, and Lucas, and you. What's the goal? I asked. The truth, she said, her eyes flashing with a cold fire I hadn't seen before. All of it. No more secrets, no more lies. I need everyone in that room to know exactly who my husband is. And I need you to be there with your spreadsheet to back me up. Can you do that? I looked at this woman, whose world had been turned upside down in the last 48 hours. She wasn't just trying to save herself. She was trying to force a reckoning that was years overdue. She was doing what I had been too afraid to do. Yes, I said, a renewed sense of purpose flooding through me. I'll be there. That evening, I walked into Lucas and Olivia's beautiful loft, the one my money had helped pay for, and felt a strange sense of calm. My parents and Lucas were already there, sitting on one side of the large living room. They looked like a united front, ready for battle. Lucas shot me a smug look, clearly thinking this meeting, called by his wife, was to force me back into line. He had no idea he was walking into his own execution. Olivia's parents, a quiet, distinguished couple, sat opposite them. I took a seat next to them, creating a clear dividing line in the room. Olivia stood in the middle, a folder in her hands. Thank you all for coming, she began, her voice ringing with authority. I called this meeting because I have discovered some deeply disturbing things about our family's finances, and the web of lies that has been holding them together. And it all starts with you, Jacob. She turned to me. Lucas smirked. My mother looked vindicated. It starts, Olivia continued, her eyes locking with her husband's, with the $52,800 that Jacob has paid to cover your secret debts for the past 5 years. The smirk vanished from Lucas's face. My mother gasped. My father just stared, his face paling. The trial had begun. The silence that followed Olivia's opening statement was deafening. It was as if she had sucked all the air out of the room. Lucas was gaping at her, his face a mixture of shock and betrayal. Olivia, what are you talking about? My mother, Eleanor, finally stammered, recovering first. That's a private family matter. Jacob is just being dramatic. Is he? Olivia replied, her voice dangerously calm. She walked over to the large TV mounted on the wall and connected her laptop. A moment later, my spreadsheet, my silent secret witness, was displayed for everyone to see. Date, Capital One, Chase, MX, Discover, personal loan, monthly total, grand total, 60 rows of undeniable, meticulously documented truth. I don't find a $52,800 figure to be particularly dramatic, Olivia said, letting them all absorb the numbers on the screen. I find it to be theft. Now, wait just a minute. My father, Henry, blustered, finding his voice. Jacob offered to help. It was a loan, a family arrangement. A loan implies an intention to repay. Olivia countered without missing a beat. Was there any intention to repay, Lucas? Or was the plan to just let your brother fund your lifestyle indefinitely while you lied to your own wife about a non-existent inheritance? Lucas just sat there, frozen, his face ashen. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was cornered, and he knew it. This is ridiculous, my mother snapped, turning her glare on me. You put her up to this. You've poisoned her against your own brother. He didn't have to, Olivia said, her voice dropping, becoming more personal, more wounded. Lucas did that all by himself. Because the $52,000? That was just the start of it. She clicked a button, and the spreadsheet disappeared, replaced by a new document. It was a summary of debts prepared by a professional. It listed car loans, personal lines of credit, and maxed-out credit cards I didn't even know existed. This was the main event, the real twist of the knife, the truth which I discovered over the last 24 hours. Olivia announced, her voice resonating with cold fury, is that my husband, your son, is not in debt for $52,000. His total personal debt, hidden from me, amounts to $96,500. $96,500. The number landed in the room like a bomb. My mother let out a small, strangled cry. My father looked like he was going to be sick. Even I was shocked. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea it was that bad. The vacations? The car? The down payment on this very loft. Olivia continued, her voice rising with each word. All debt. The entire life he has built with me is a house of cards, funded by lies and his brother's quiet sacrifice. He lied to me about his success, he lied to me about his finances, and he lied to me about his family. She finally turned her full attention to her husband, who looked like a small, broken child. You let me believe you were this brilliant, self-made man. You let your own brother cripple himself financially to maintain your fantasy. And then, and this is the part one truly cannot forgive, you had the audacity to let your family humiliate him for it. She looked at my parents. And you too. You enabled it. You watched it happen. You worshipped the image and ignored the man who was paying for the frame. You should be ashamed. It was a complete and total annihilation. Every lie, every secret, every injustice, laid bare under the harsh lights of the living room. Lucas finally broke. He buried his face in his hands and started to sob. Not quiet, regretful tears, but loud, gulping, self-pitying sobs. It was the sound of a golden child who had finally been told no for the very first time. My parents were speechless, their faces a canvas of horror and shame. They couldn't defend him. They couldn't deny the proof on the screen. The entire rotten foundation of our family had crumbled in the space of 10 minutes. I just sat there, watching it all unfold. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel anger. I just felt quiet. The $52,000 weight had finally been lifted, not just from my finances, but from my soul. I was free. This is the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally got control of my life back. Thank you for sticking with me to this point. You guys are amazing. If you could do me a huge favor and like this video and comment the number 1 down below, it lets me know you made it this far with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. In the ringing silence that followed Lucas's breakdown, Olivia was the only one who seemed to have a plan. She was done with the emotional chaos. It was time for practical, brutal solutions. Here is what is going to happen, she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. She sounded like a CEO announcing a corporate restructuring. The family, my parents and Lucas included, looked at her like she was their only hope. First, she declared, the lease on the SUV is being terminated. As of tomorrow, Lucas, you will be driving my old Honda Civic. It's paid for. Lucas looked up, his face tear-streaked and puffy. But my clients. You don't have any clients, Lucas? Olivia cut him off coldly. We both know that, so you don't need to impress anyone. Second, she continued, the trip to Italy we had planned for the spring is cancelled. We'll be lucky if we can afford a weekend at the state park for the next 5 years. All non-essential spending stops immediately. That means no more dinners out, no more designer clothes, no more gadgets. She paused, letting the reality of the situation sink in. Third, and most importantly, you are getting a job. A real job. With a W-2 and a steady paycheck. I don't care if it's bagging groceries or working in a call center. You will start contributing to this mountain of debt you've created. Your career as a visionary entrepreneur is over. Each point was a nail in the coffin of the life Lucas had pretended to live. My parents just sat there, nodding numbly, their authority completely stripped away. They had no power here. Olivia, the outsider, the wife, was now in complete control. She then turned to me. Her expression softened slightly. Jacob, I am so incredibly sorry. I promise you we will pay you back. Every single dollar. Don't worry about it right now, Olivia, I said. Just focus on getting your own house in order. My parents tried to approach me as the meeting broke up. My mother started with a tearful, Jacob, we had no idea. I just held up a hand. I didn't have the energy for their excuses. Not tonight. I need some space, I said, my voice flat. A lot of space. I walked out of that loft feeling lighter than I had in years. The immediate fallout was messy and painful to watch, but it was also necessary. The power dynamic had been irrevocably shattered. Lucas was no longer the golden child. He was just a man in a tremendous amount of debt. And I was no longer the good son. I was just Jacob. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The reign of the golden child was over. The reconstruction was about to begin. A few days passed in blessed silence. No frantic calls, no manipulative texts. It was like the eye of the hurricane. The destructive winds had passed, leaving a strange, unsettling calm in their wake. I went to work, came home, and enjoyed the quiet, reveling in the simple freedom of not having to check if my brother's life was imploding. Then, one evening, there was a knock on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and my heart sank. It was my father, standing there alone, looking older and more tired than I had ever seen him. My first instinct was to ignore him, to pretend I wasn't home. But the slump of his shoulders, the defeated look in his eyes, it wasn't the posture of a man coming for another fight. It was the posture of a man who had lost. I opened the door. Henry, I said, using his first name. Felt strange, but Dad didn't feel right anymore. Jacob, he said, his voice hoarse. Can I come in for a minute? I stepped aside and let him in. He walked into my small living room, the one I'd stayed in for 5 years to afford his other son's life, and looked around. He seemed to be seeing it for the first time. We stood in awkward silence for a long moment. He started, then stopped, struggling for words. I came here to apologize. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I was wrong, he said, finally looking me in the eye. What I said on the phone, about you being cruel, that was wrong. I was wrong. He took a shaky breath. Seeing it all on that screen, the numbers, seeing what you gave up, we should have seen it sooner. We should have asked more questions. I should have stood up for you at that dinner table. The apology was clumsy, halting, and years too late. But it was also the most honest thing he had said to me in a decade. I'm sorry, Jacob, he said, his voice cracking. I failed you. As a father, I failed you. A part of me wanted to rage at him. A part of me wanted to yell, where was this apology for the last 5 years? But looking at the broken man in front of me, I just felt a profound sense of sadness. I appreciate you saying that, I said, And I meant it. But it's going to take a long time for things to feel normal again. If they ever do. I know, he said, nodding. I understand. I wanted you to know. He didn't stay long. The chasm between us was too wide to be bridged by one conversation. But as he left, I felt a flicker of something. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a start. He had acknowledged the truth. He had taken the first difficult step out of the fog of denial. It didn't fix the past, but it made it possible to imagine a different kind of future. A future built on truth, not on comfortable lies. The next year was a year of quiet, seismic shifts. As promised, Olivia orchestrated a complete overhaul of their lives. The flashy SUV was replaced by her old sedan. The loft was put on the market, and they moved into a small, modest rental in a less fashionable part of town. Lucas got a job in sales at a local furniture store. There were no more exotic vacations on social media. Instead, there were pictures of them hiking at a nearby park. It was a humbling, jarring return to reality for him. For me, life blossomed. With an extra $880 in my bank account each month. The financial pressure I'd lived under for 5 years evaporated. I started contributing heavily to my retirement fund. I put a down payment on a condo in a nice neighborhood, with a balcony and a spare bedroom. For the first time, I felt like I was building a life for myself, not just servicing the debts of someone else's. My relationship with my family remained distant, but civil. My mother would call periodically, her conversations filled with awkward small talk and a desperate, unstated plea for things to go back to how they were. I kept the calls short and polite. I was done being her emotional support animal. My father and I spoke more often. Our conversations were still stilted, but there was a new undercurrent of respect from his side. He was trying. It was a slow, arduous process like turning a massive ship, but he was trying. About 6 months after the family meeting, I received an alert from my bank. It was a direct deposit. From Lucas Cole. Amount: $100. Memo: Payment 1. $100. It was a pittance compared to the mountain he owed me, but it was also a miracle. It was the first time in his entire life he had ever given me anything without being forced. It was an acknowledgement of the debt, both financial and moral. I stared at the notification for a long time. I thought about sending a text, something sarcastic like, "Only 527 more to go," but I didn't. That was the old Jacob, the one who lived in a state of constant reaction to his family's dysfunction. Instead, I replied with a simple 2-word text. Received. Thank you. The monthly payments continued after that. Sometimes it was $100, sometimes $150, once it was only $50. But it always came. Each payment was a small, steady drop of water, slowly eroding the mountain of resentment I still carried. My promotion at work finally came through, the one I had put on the back burner because I didn't have the mental bandwidth to take on more responsibility. My new, higher salary felt like it was truly mine, earned for me and me alone. I started dating again. My life, which had been in black and white for so long, was slowly returning to color. I learned that healing wasn't a dramatic, cinematic moment. It was quiet. It was paying your own mortgage. It was receiving a $100 payment from your brother and feeling a sense of peace instead of anger. It was the slow, steady work of rebuilding a life on a foundation of self-respect, a foundation that no one could ever take from me again. A year to the day after the fateful dinner, an invitation arrived. It was a group text from Olivia. We're hosting Thanksgiving this year. It will be small and simple. We'd love for all of you to come. My first instinct was to say no. The thought of sitting at another Thanksgiving table with them made my stomach churn. But then I considered the source. This wasn't an invitation from my mother, steeped in obligation and denial. This was from Olivia, the truth teller. This was a gesture of rebuilding. I decided to go. Their new rental was small, but clean and cozy. The overwhelming scent of turkey still filled the air, but something was different. The tension was gone. The need to perform, to put on a show of perfect family happiness, had vanished. Lucas looked different. He had lost some of the polished, preening arrogance. He looked tired, but also more grounded, more real. He greeted me at the door with a quiet, "Hey Jacob, glad you could make it." There was no smirk, no swagger. Just a man who had been humbled by reality. The dinner was the most normal family meal we'd had in over a decade. The conversation wasn't about Lucas's latest venture or my sensible job. We talked about the weather, a movie Megan had seen, the progress Olivia's parents were making on their garden. It was boring and it was beautiful. Later, while I was helping my mother clear the plates, she turned to me in the quiet of the kitchen. "I know I was wrong, Jacob," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She wouldn't meet my eyes, focusing instead on scrubbing a plate with far more vigor than necessary. I was so afraid that if Lucas failed, it would mean I had failed as a mother, that people would judge me. It wasn't an excuse. It was a confession, the final, hidden piece of the puzzle. Her motivation hadn't just been love for him. It had been fear for herself. It was selfish and sad, and for the first time I didn't feel anger towards her. I just felt a quiet pity. I understood her, and in understanding, I could finally let go of my need for her to be the mother I had always wanted her to be. "I know, Mom," I said softly. Back in the dining room, Lucas stood up, raising his glass of water. Everyone quieted down. "I just want to say something," he said, his voice unsteady. He looked around the table, making eye contact with each of us, his gaze lingering for a moment on me. "I want to propose a toast to family, and to telling each other the truth, even when it hurts like hell." He raised his glass to me, especially then. We all raised our glasses. In that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of our old family and the fragile framework of a new one, I finally understood. I hadn't destroyed our family a year ago. I had saved it. I had forced it to break so that it could be rebuilt into something honest. It's been another year since that second Thanksgiving. The $100 payments still arrive in my bank account every month like clockwork. The grand total of what he owes me barely seems to have shrunk. But that's not the point anymore. The point is the gesture. The point is the consistency. The point is the slow, arduous march toward accountability. Our family is not perfect. It never will be. There are still scars, still moments of awkwardness where the ghosts of our past selves hover in the corners of the room. My mother still has moments where she coddles Lucas, and my father still sometimes retreats into silence when things get tense. But it's different now. The foundation has shifted. The truth is out in the open, and it acts as a disinfectant. We are all more careful with each other, more honest, more real. Lucas and Olivia are still together. They are fighting for their marriage, a battle I believe they might actually win. Their life isn't glamorous, but it's theirs. It's built on paychecks and budgets, not on lies and my bank statements. Sometimes, when we talk, I see glimpses of the brother I had when we were kids, before the world taught him that charm was more valuable than character. As for me, I'm happy. Genuinely happy. I'm in a serious relationship with a wonderful woman who knows the whole story and respects me for the boundaries I set. My condo feels like a home. My career is thriving. I finally took a real vacation to Hawaii and paid for it with money that was unequivocally my own. For a long time, I believed that setting that boundary at Thanksgiving was an act of destruction. I thought I had burned my family to the ground. But I see now that it wasn't an act of destruction. It was an act of construction. I had to burn down the rotten, termite-infested structure to build something new in its place. I learned that boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They are fences that teach people how you expect to be treated. They aren't about cruelty. They are about self-respect. I lost the illusion of a perfect family, the one I had nearly bankrupted myself, financially and emotionally, to maintain. In its place, I found something far more valuable. I found myself. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your own peace? I'd love to hear about it. Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what I share next.